I guess we're all here today because we're all excited about IoT. We're all excited about connected devices. We're all potentially in the branding, marketing, and advertising industry. I'm here today to sort of share a lot of the things that we've learned in the last 5 years about this sort of interaction of connected devices and advertising. And I think you guys all recognize this iconic image in the front slide here of Zuckerberg just a few weeks ago at the Mobile World Congress, kind of walking down up the aisle, and everyone with their Oculus stuck to their face. And he's like, you guys are all my bitches. And the Matrix, and you all are in it. And that's kind of everything that's going through his head. So the agenda for today is I'll share a bit about my entrepreneurial story, because I'm sure some of you are wondering why there's a 12-year-old Asian guy on stage. I'm happy to explain more. Why do moments matter? So moments you'll hear come up quite a bit in this talk as sort of the core metric around how I believe brands should be thinking about IoT and even in just generally connected devices. Connectivity in brands, what are implications? And I'll have 7 points about that, and hopefully it'll help with some takeaway items. And then really some comments on the connected generation. The connected generation being everyone in this room, everyone that's connected, and what that means for brands, and why even in third world countries that are now leapfrogging and having new devices being purchased that are not, a desktop or a laptop, but rather a tablet computer, as being a really important dynamic to keep track of. Now, a bit about myself. So this is 2 tiles that kind of explain me growing up, which was like last year. The top is Counter-Strike, which I played a lot of. Actually, at my peak, I was playing like 8 hours a day, and that's also why I ended up realizing that I had so much free time that I ended up skipping 4 grades in elementary school and high school, which is why I graduated college at the age of 18, and why I look this young. I'm now 24. I'm over the hill now. And then the bottom tile is Photoshop 7. Such a throwback, right? But I think a lot of the functions are still the same with Photoshop today. And this was actually the first copy of Photoshop that I pirated when I was 11 years old. And that actually served as my sort of design background. I self-taught how to design, graphic design, logo design, even print design at one point. And those 2 kind of combined with sort of my affinity towards computers, was video games and then graphic design. Now, I began to sort of design. Actually, the reason why I started designing was in Counter-Strike. You have these clans that you can join, which are teams that you can kind of compete against each other. And each clan has their own insignia, and I wanted to design a really cool insignia, so that's how I got into designing. And then I realized that skill could be monetized. I remember I sold my first insignia for $10 over PayPal. I was like, oh my gosh, I can make real money. And at the time I was like 12 years old, right? So this is like a really big deal. $10 is like a lot. So that's how I got into designing and actually making it sort of a business. Now, this is also a large part of my growing up. I know it's really hard to believe, but as a Canadian, I used to play ice hockey. I used to be really buff. I actually just got back into it. So another reason to celebrate this year, one of my New Year's resolutions was to buy my gear back and start playing it. So I started playing it. It was great. This picture is actually a picture of what happened to me almost 8 years ago. So I was on an on-ice incident. It was a knee-on-knee hit, except I was the guy looking like he was in pain. And I got hit, and I broke my knee, and I was in a wheelchair for a couple months, and then I was in crutches for even longer. Now, when you can't move, you usually have a few choices, right? You can play a lot of video games, right, which I was already doing. You can watch a lot of porn. I'm not going to comment on that. Or you can start a company. And I was like, let me start a company. So I started my first company, and when they say go break a leg, I broke my leg and I started a company. And it was my first web design company, and that's kind of how I got addicted to entrepreneurship and really getting into it. Now, I mentioned I graduated when I was 18. This is in 2009. The economy was not exactly the best, as you recall, in 2009. And I I began to figure out where I would work. And Canada is a very conservative economy, so we were okay. But I was like, well, I've got nerd tendencies, so let me see if I can go to Nerdtopia, which is San Francisco and Silicon Valley. So I flew down there for the first time in 2009. I visited some companies. One of the companies was our favorite Dig. Those of you who remember Dig, we have a lot of nostalgia here. RFD old Dig, now there's a new one, which is actually pretty good. But I actually ended up getting a job at Dig, and this is what got me down to the US in the first place. You can blame them for getting the visa and bringing me down here. And so I actually ended up joining Dig in business development in 2010. Now, this was very short-lived. It was, I just joined in January, and then I got laid off in May, because Dig, as you remember, started to hit a wall. And at the ripe old age of 19, getting laid off is not exactly a good thing, and with traditional Asian parents and everything. I went home, it was around Mother's Day. My mom said it was the worst Mother's Day she'd ever had, and following Mother's Days, I tried to make it up to her. Now, I found myself actually on a flight like this one after I was unemployed. I walked up and down the aisles, and this is how the idea for Kiip came about. I remember walking up and down the aisles, and I saw everyone on their phones, at least the ones that were awake, playing games or pretending to work, right? And then it really hit me that this was a very fast, rapidly growing behavior on mobile gaming. And I was asking questions like any entrepreneur would, like, why is it so rapidly growing? And notice this thing, this whole, achieving thing. People love leveling up and hitting high scores, and because it was instant access to this content with the App Store that was now available at the time, it was a way for everyone to sort of have this experience in their pocket. And I was like, this is great. But, me being actually in business school, I should have mentioned I studied marketing. I remember seeing this, right? A lot of advertising that really wasn't really conducive to the experience. And that's the understatement of the century, is literally just slapping people around the face and like interrupting the game and leering at people. And I was like, well, this is not exactly the best experience, especially if someone feels good, especially when they've leveled up and they have this mini dopamine rush. Why would we waste this dopamine rush? So the idea for Kiip was born, which was instead of putting an ad in that moment, why not actually reward people? And why not have a brand reward you when you're hitting this dopamine peak and maybe have that brand benefit off of that happiness? So I'm going to show you this quick video to show you a bit about what we've done.
We fundamentally believe that in mobile, it's really a series of moments. You evoke your phone in a moment of need. So if you're hungry, you're going to take out your food ordering app. If you're bored, you're going to load your game. If you're feeling productive, you're going to load your productivity app. For us, moments became very important very quickly because we realized that it was almost a currency that indicated hyper engagement. You're really with someone when they're in a moment where they're feeling something. And so this would be for a game, leveling up or having a high score, or in a fitness app and logging a run, counting calories. We looked at to-dos and productivity and found that finishing a to-do was something that people found a lot of delight in as well. And so we began to see these moments pretty much everywhere. So whether it be gaming moments, fitness moments, music moments, productivity moments, dinner moments, food moments, you name it, we wanted to create that connection with the consumer and the brand in moments that matter to them. You only have a limited amount of time as a brand to be a part of someone's life. Now you're there when something meaningful is happening. And that is the best, most efficient way to be there while respecting the consumer.
So that shows you a bit of the motion behind the product and a bit of a soundtrack to make you tear up a bit. The reason why I showed this because it shows the evolution. Gaming became the DNA, of course, knowing that people were leveling up. These were very obvious moments. But we evolved very rapidly. We knew that moments, as that currency that I was talking about earlier, is now in things like fitness apps and productivity apps and music apps and recipe apps. You name it, anything that someone's just doing on a daily basis. And you could be finishing a workout, and you could be favoriting a recipe, you could be clearing up the to-dos for the day. And these were all moments that, again, became meaningful. But remember, these were all in-app. Now, I'm just setting this all up because I'm about to reveal how this all relates to IoT in a bit. But it was all within app, but it was still moments. It was still related to connected activity. Now, you can see here now in the background, that's not a disease or some contagion. That is actually moments happening across the US over a 24-hour period of time. Sped up. Really, really cool to see. You can see now what we were trying to do is embed into experiences that were already occurring. So we didn't want to make our own app or create something that people needed to sign up to, but rather embed into experiences that people have already been downloaded onto their phone and they're already using. So I'm hoping some of you in this room have experienced the Kiip reward, and it's really interesting because one of the things that we wanted to do was make the reward serendipitous, where you actually have no idea when the reward's about to occur. And that actually removed the incentivization component of it. It was about delighting someone. It was about thanking them. It was about gifting them, which are all very soft and mushy things. But at the end of the day, it really matters when it comes to building brand and creating that unforgettable experience between the consumer and the brand. But ultimately, the most powerful piece here was now the fact that we were in these connected devices and we could detect these moments, right? So think of this progression. Now we're in these apps. Now we know that you're logging your run, you're finishing your to-dos, you're snoozing your alarm clock, you're leveling up in a game. These are all moments that now are all happening that we can actually respond to. We can now reward. We can now be there as a brand. But if you look at marketing in the past, even loyalty, everything's always been about the transaction as a trigger, right? So you bought something, and here's points, here's an email thanking you for stuff. There's always a lot around the transaction. Now we realize that the paradigm shift we're seeing is all the moments in between transactions. And that's what makes it so powerful. We can now be able to influence and be a part of moments that consumers are experiencing in between transactions. And that second line there, rewards, not define the behavior, but behavior defining the rewards, is ultimately the philosophy we've adopted and how I believe all of us should think about rewarding as we move into the future. Rewarding in the long haul, in the past several decades, has been very heavy-handed. Right? It's been very like, you buy this, I'll give you that, right? And I'll make you do all this stuff, and you sign to my thing, you go to my site, you redeem all these points. But ultimately now, the consumer is powerful insofar as we have this device that gives us all these experiences we can choose. But it also needs the brands to be a part of those, to be a part of those experiences. That's why having rewards, not defining behavior, but behavior-defining rewards, is the key. So why moments? Now, with every metric that sounds fluffy, like engagement, for example, and everyone trying to come up with their own way to define it, it loses its meaning. So very early on in this process, we've attempted to define it with this formula. Now, this is not self-serving. This isn't just for Kiip. Many of you may have recognized that moments is a metric that Google, for example, is really pushing right now, called micro moments. They've talked about it as micro moments. Of course, there's the ill-fated Twitter moments feature, and then Facebook has moments. And so there's a lot of moments talk, and obviously inevitably being aligned with the brand. But this is our formula. It's an event with a context is a moment. An event is simply a trigger, an action you take as a user. The context is everything around it, and that creates that moment. Now, in Google's scenario, let me give you what it is for them first. So if you are searching, the event is the act of searching. The context is the content of the search itself. Maybe the device you were searching it on, where you were searching, what time of the day you were searching, all the weather when you were searching, all these things matter when it comes to what a moment ends up becoming for them. And Google's whole point is when you're searching in a moment, let's say you're searching, carpet stain remover, that is a moment where you clearly spilled something on your carpet, and that, a brand like Tide or Vanish or whatever could be a part of that experience. So, yes, moments are having its moment. So there's a lot of different companies now that we realize are really catching on to this word. And I do say, I'm very happy that the industry is starting to do this, because for the first time, and the industry I mean is advertising and marketing, for the first time, we're now aligning towards a metric that actually the consumer also aligns to as well. Let me explain. We've always used performance metrics like GRPs, TRPs, impressions, things that are very impersonal sounding, that really serve just the advertiser and the publisher, right? It doesn't really serve the consumer. But with moments, consumers actually live in moments, and advertisers are finally aligning to your moments, which is a really big deal. Moments have also become a planning framework. Now, this is where you start to see the evolving evolution of thinking into connected devices. Is we realize that there's moments that will occur in app. There will be moments that occur within the mobile sites and experiences that you're using. But there's also moments that will happen from connected devices. I don't want to give away too much, but that also becomes part of this pool of moments that occur. And you can also see that there's this way that aligns directly to how brands think about their products. So if you're a brand manager right now, you probably know kind of what I'm talking about, which is the idea of your brand is serving moments, right? my product serves these moments for the consumer. That's how you think about your product and the personality you've given it. But the way that we can align that now to marketing and media is very similar. We now find those moments in the exact things that people are engaging in. So it's time to invent new permission. If you think about the industry overall, we've leveraged permissions that were invented from decades prior. So the permission of, in the soap opera, when a scene is sort of somewhat concluded, here's an ad that will show up now that will run for 30 seconds. We kind of expect that when we watch television now. And so that permission has been baked in. Now the permission in mobile never really was established. Permission in mobile was your little something, boom, and you're like, whoa. And so we're like, well, we need to create a permission that's aligned towards the way people consume on mobile. And this new permission was around congratulating and gifting and thanking you. We believe that's an innate human response that we will be positive with. If someone's thanking you, you will let them finish thanking you because it's just a very positive, feel-good thing. So 7 ways connectivity and brands matter. First is every screen is seamless. Now, let me just begin by explaining this what do I mean by connectivity? When I said the connected generation, I mean anything that's connected to the internet or connected together, and then inevitably connected to the internet. The fact that we have so many screens on our bodies now that are connected, like my watch is connected to my phone, and then my phone will sync with my computer, and my computer is obviously the internet, my phone's internet. I have at least at any given moment like 3 different internet connections and 3 different carriers like through my Wi-Fi, things like that. So there's a lot of connected devices. But the reason why this is important is there's this every screen dynamic that consumers are expecting from brands. So the implications for brands, and just keep in mind what I'm talking about over the next 6 points, is the implications for brands. Is that there is no, well, okay, well, I guess you're only available here now, so I'll go here now. It doesn't work that way. And I'm sure all of us in the room already are aware of this. So you can see a lot of platforms in the ad industry. A lot of platforms have evolved to make every screen advertising really, really seamless. Companies like Flight, there's a few others like Cargo that do this automatically so that you don't have to actually create new creative every time you go to a new thing. But think about the implications though when we go into connected devices. How does the creative show there? Does it show up in the little screen in my Nest? Does it show up in the dashboard of my car? Where does it show up? We fundamentally believe that the experience should stay within the phone. It is still the hub that really connects a lot of our devices in our home, in our car, you name it. And so that's still the best. And on that note, user experience and interface design is really a huge challenge right now for how not only products can go to the connected world, but also brands. Now, why do I have this picture of Tinder? The reason is because I believe the way that UX has evolved in the dynamic of the world of connected devices is that it's created things as simple as creating new interface and user experience interaction inventions as simple as binary, which is swipe left, swipe right, which by the way is now figured out its way into so many different interfaces, right? It's become a total movement in interface design in mobile and in connected devices where simply doing this and doing that is an easy way to give inputs and it's aligned with the way the screen is in your life. Now, I show both of these because there's Tinder and then there's actually a Tinder for professional connections. So you can see now there's a lot of these interactions with UX that's baking itself into the fact that user experience is becoming a challenge with your connected devices. And then it can be as complex as an experience in your connected car. Now, what does that look like? Now, I was just in China last week, and I was spending some time with the Alibaba Motor Group. There's an Alibaba Motor Group, believe it or not. And they are building an experience for someone in a connected car to a theater in a mall. Now, what does that look like? So imagine this with me. This all involves brands, by the way. So you would drive to the mall. You would buy the tickets in your car for the movie on the way to the mall. It would have your parking spot pre-selected for you and give you directions there once you're at the mall. Then you would obviously go to the theater and watch the movie. And on your way back, in the car, the soundtrack for the movie will already be preloaded into your vehicle, and you'd be listening to it on your way home. Now, boom, right? This is the type of stuff that's actually becoming very real. But that's user experience. That's both an experience between interfaces in your car, and you buying it in dash, to you showing up in the theater and just not needing to worry about anything. That seamlessness is really a part of this complexity of an experience that connected devices is bringing to our lives, that brands really have this responsibility now to facilitate, right? Alibaba through Alipay, and then of course the theater company, and of course the mall as well. Now the third, and perhaps most heavy point here is the connected device world to us, and this is where I begin to introduce this concept of connected moments. I talked about moments already, right? Moments happening within apps, things that people are doing. That makes sense. But there's also now moments and triggers that occur in these connected devices in our world. And by the way, I should remind you, the world's most popular connected device is actually still this, right? So there's so many other things that are going to be connected that bring that whole pool together, but this is still considered a connected device. And so the moments that came out of this connected device is through the app. And the moments that come from other connected devices, as you can see here in the background, are also now, I believe, the category of connected moments. So hopefully we all adopt this terminology. What are connected moments? Where can the brand add value in these connected moments? And so it could be anything from, I hope you recognize most of these, but I'll talk about some of them in a second. There's thermostats, there's self-driving cars, there's TVs, there's smart locks, there's smart ovens, you name it. But I will show you this quick video.
So the future of Kiip is really looking at moments that actually exist in connected devices. It just so happens that the smartphone is the world's most popular connected device, but there will soon be other connected devices that will gain popularity, whether it be a car that's getting connected, or your connected thermostat, or your connected fridge. These are all moments that we can now use and be able to reward as well. So the moment you know that you made your energy consumption savings goal, or your fridge tells you that your vegetables are about to go rotten, or your light bulb is changing, or your car is running out of gas, these are all moments that you will know in real time that you can respond to. So really, Kiip's vision was always about adding value to moments throughout consumers' days. We realized that these moments can come from any device. And that the phone was the first connected device, but there are many more to come.
So now you see the world expanding almost exponentially. But let me show you now this world that we see. This is a bit of a complex diagram, but it's simple to explain. You see the demographic or the target audience or the user in the middle, but you see all the app activity that happened around them, which are their existing activity from their phone. And then now there's the addition of connected moments within their experience and their lifestyle. So it could be everything from the connected coffee brewer they kick off in the morning when they wake up from Keurig, or their connected garage door that they open from Chamberlain when they take the car out, to their Tesla when they're driving it to work, and to the connected treadmill that they see at the gym. These are all different connected devices that experience moments. Now, why I mentioned passive moments in automation is now you're seeing the real epiphany here, which is that these are all things that are happening without us needing to input or type anything into a search bar. Now this becomes intent. Now Google became the world's most valuable internet company because of their ability to detect their intent and sell that intent to advertisers. That is how they became this valuable. Where did they get this intent from? By having this ruse of being able to search for things, which is not a ruse, it's a real very valuable thing for you. Now think about though the future of these intent triggers. They now come from the devices you're experiencing and interacting with that are just a part of the fabric of your everyday life. This becomes your connected device and connected moments graphic. And on that note, as humans, we still need to have words to describe things. And so we actually embarked on a very big project last year where we wanted to classify moments not only just from apps, but from the world of connected devices. And I will share with you the different worlds of connected devices we've embedded into our platform to date. You can see here, this is what we had early last year. It was pretty sparse. You had a few things that came from game apps, dating apps, learning apps, you name it, right? And then, boom, right? And we completed the whole matrix. And we're like, there's so many more. This actually extends way beyond. This is just a little sample. Now, this looks really familiar because like with Google and search words and with AdWords, that's where they were able to help advertisers target the intent because you were searching for them. But now we can see the love moment that's occurring. We can see the addictive moment that's occurring, the survival and the shopping moment from connected device activity and from the activity that's coming from within apps. So there's a lot of different things now we can use as that proxy for intent. And it really is the next big thing. Now, the proximity of the device is a concept I want to introduce to you as well. What this is, it explains the implications on the physiology of the consumer and how you actually address their needs as a person, as a body, versus what they're attempting to experience. So wearables is where this becomes very important, right? Right now, there are wearables and ingestibles that we can use to detect everything from if someone is tired or they're irritated to if they're excited, right? These are all different moments that also come from a device that's very close in proximity to the consumer. And so the fact that it's close means that there's value for the brand in being able to address your physiological needs, which obviously has implications for everyone from pharma brands to even brands that are there to entertain you, right? Comedy, entertainment, just video, you name it, home entertainment. This type of stuff becomes really, really key. And so here are the things we've done. We've worked with connected car platforms now, like Automatic and Rogio and Metromile, where based on your activity, let's say you're about to run out of gas, Shell can reward you with a gas card, right? This is a very simple example of knowing your need before you even know you need it, because the car knows this. And then on the right-hand side is Sony's LifeLog wearable devices. They're suite of wearables that detect everything from you being tired to you being obviously an overachiever and you're running and your marathon training. So knowing these have been very key. And we even took it to another level where we're able to find moments from a device called a breathometer, which is a Bluetooth-enabled breathalyzer. Now, I make the joke that if you need a Bluetooth-enabled breathalyzer to know if you're drunk, you're probably drunk. But we were able to find these moments where if you were above your limit, of course, borderline, we would reward you with an Uber or a Lyft credit for a safe ride home. So these things can actually impact and have real-life implications, and we're very, very excited about this. The most recent one that we announced, this was actually just a couple weeks ago at Mobile World Congress, was with Oral-B. Now, Oral-B, believe it or not, has a line of connected toothbrushes called Smart Series, and they have now sold 1 million of these brushes. Now, each one of these brushes costs $180. So they've obviously done very well with this concept, and it's not a tiny thing anymore. There's 1 million people with these brushes. Now, we actually announced a couple weeks ago their new brush model, the world's first rewards-enabled toothbrush. Boom! Now, I know this sounds ridiculous because it's not only awesome for your kids, because sometimes it's a massive chore to make, so get them just to brush, but it's also really, really cool around detecting a daily habit moment. We are supposed to brush at least twice a day for 2 minutes each. There's a way to use moments like knowing when someone is brushing their teeth on a business trip as a way to potentially reward someone, or if they're brushing it regularly after midnight and their sleeping patterns are all messed up. Here are things that we can use as moments that a brand can be a part of. Now, this is just a little bit of a demo reel to show you what it might look like. But this is part of really the way this can evolve, is how do we take these moments and actually add value to the consumer's life. Adding value, by the way, we've made a huge bet on rewards, but I want to be very clear with you. The concept of rewarding is not just about couponing or trinkets or physical rewards, but rather things that are virtual and things that are actually valuable in the moment. Now, imagine your kid brushes their teeth for the third day regularly for the 2 minutes they're supposed to be brushing, and they unlock, an episode of a Disney show, right? There's ways to use content as well. It doesn't actually have to be something physical every single time. So we knew that the value of content as a reward is also quite powerful. Now, the fourth implication for brands is about AI and automation. Now, we actually are seeing a massive amount of dollars being invested into this with driving. Now, you just saw this morning that GM or Ford, one of them acquired a 40-person startup that raised $20 million in the Valley for $1 billion because of their self-driving car technology. AI and the way it applies our lives becoming more convenient in everything from your calendar to your car is starting to become really, really, really core to our everyday living. Now, let me explain AI for a second here. Now, this is actually the June oven. Many of you may have heard of the June oven. It's a smart oven that is able to detect the thing you put into the oven, and you will never have to set it anymore. It will know to do it at this number of degrees and this long, and uses smart technology. And it actually has a camera in the oven, so you can actually leave the home, let your cookies bake, and know when they're ready, right? Now, when it comes to AI, it can be everything from, okay, your cookies are now done. Why can't the Pillsbury Doughboy reward you with a free movie? Or or even turn on your smart TV for you. Now, this type of stuff sounds so science fiction, but it is beginning to happen. And this is all part of the way that we think about the response of the brand as actually being a part of this AI fabric, which actually, I call it pseudo-AI in many ways for brands to get started, because you don't have to build an entire brain or engine behind this. At the end of the day, the consumer really only needs a few experiences where they begin to believe that it's adding a lot of value. And looking at, it's really about portrayal. Where is 80% of your consumer going to spend? 80% of your time with your consumer going to spend? How can you add value to that 80%? Through a few experiences. Knowing when they're going to be doing things like finishing a baking exercise or finishing a workout. These are all things that brands should begin to realize as part of their moments wheel or their moments brand. The fifth around connectivity is instant gratification. I'll talk about this a bit more with the connected generation, but how many of us took an Uber here this morning and were like, oh, I'll get more than 5 minutes, I'm gonna go to Lyft, right? So it's like literally that fast. We are expecting things this quickly. And so knowing that we have this expectation of instant gratification is something that brands are now starting to get into in ways like the Echo, right? Let's not forget this is a connected device that is basically a direct link to your bank account to take all your money. Thank you, Amazon. And the way it is, oh, you said you wanted more of this, we will buy it for you now. Thank you. And that's not what it sounds like, but that's what it probably should. And this is if those of you who are familiar with this, is basically a speaker. So Amazon are like, let's have a speaker to play music for you, and then listen to everything you're saying, so that if you need to buy something, we'll buy it for you. That's literally what the Echo is doing. Now, this is a connected device, and it is catered directly to the consumer's need of instant gratification. And I might remind you, this is only going to get worse or better, depending on how you look at it. And this is why I call us the connected generation, or the instant generation. Is we now have these services that are catering to our every whimsical need in the moment, and it comes to us within now an hour and even less. And this is only going to get, like I said, more and more intense. But it also means that it's implying that the consumer has a loyalty towards a whole different set of things now. When you think about it in the past, I might have been loyal to Safeway, or I might have been loyal to Whole Foods, but now I'm actually loyal to a lot of these intermediary apps that facilitate these experiences in the middle. And this is where brands have the opportunity to either create a whole new business for themselves or fall behind. I always say that the spirits and booze companies should have actually created a Drizzly. Drizzly, as some of you may know, is an on-demand delivery service for alcohol, right? And so this is the type of thing that a lot of these brands have to start to think about investing in. You now have brands that did fall behind and had to spend, for example, like Under Armour, $500 million to get caught up to buy 3 apps. Under Armour spent $500 million to acquire MyFitnessPal and Mondo and MyFitness to be a part of their digital fitness product, which is now really the future of their business and how they're growing. And I know a bunch of them are going to be here this weekend to share more about what they're building. The 6th implication for brand is actually new forms of content. Now, what does that mean now, right? Like content used to be pretty simple to produce, and now it's obviously much more complicated, as I said, even in ad creative, but even beyond. Like you look at things like Snapchat, right? You see and discover a whole new type of content they have to produce specifically for Snapchat. But why I mention this is because when you see VR come about, when you see other services that become a part of people's everyday lives, how does content become a part of those experiences, right? This is the big opportunity, I think, for anyone who is working at a brand to figure out, well, do I create a recipe bank, right? So you have, for example, brands like Campbell's and Conagra that were very ahead of their time. About 20 years ago when they created their first sort of recipe strategies where, yes, we're about selling canned soup, but we know people will use this stuff, the recipes, so we'll be the ones that provide them the recipes. So the recipe content they have now has become syndicated into so many different platforms. My question to you is, what is your recipe bank? What is the content that your brand can own that can be a part of these experiences that people can bring back to you? It's so classic, history repeats itself. The soap opera was P&G's recipe bank, as it were, being the content that they could own that was part of the television experience. So new mediums come from new connected devices, and it's only going to become more and more exciting, but only if you can own the banks of that can become syndicated and become part of your strategy. The last is messaging. Now, why am I bringing messaging up? Now, like I mentioned, I was in China last week. Many of you have heard of WeChat. Many of you have probably used it. WeChat is China's largest, most popular app. It's also their text messaging app, to their flight booking app, to their social media app. You can actually message an airline and say, I want a flight tomorrow morning from Beijing to Shanghai, and type it out in human words, and the airline will respond to you with an automated booking. Now, this is very related to connected devices because for some reason, the world of our interface of the human and the brand has basically gone back to the command line, right? And the command line, though, in a human form, which is us talking about it with words, we've all heard of Operator, perhaps. We've heard of Magic. These are startups that have basically figured out in some way how to automate shopping using command lines that are from just basic human phrases. And this is going to become more and more ubiquitous. Mark my words, I do believe. For example, Marriott app recently rolled out a text-based concierge service. A lot of this is manual, but eventually can become automated. This is all part of connected devices because it's a way for us to tell one device what we want, and a whole domino effect of things occur afterwards as part of that automated service that the brand is supplying for you. Now, this leads me to this point of advertising and marketing as a service. Everyone in this room, I'm assuming, has marketing their purview or is part of what they do on a daily basis, hopefully. And with marketing, you have to realize that it's not just marketing anymore. You are all service providers. You are now people who provide service to your consumers. And for the longest time, through our advertising and marketing, we weren't doing this. We might have been entertaining them through a funny ad, but now we have the ability and the duty to use these inputs and these interactions and connected devices as a way to serve our customers better through everything that they're already doing. Right? Under Armour is doing this through the digital experiences that they acquired. Many more brands are doing it in the various connected devices and connected platforms that they've become embedded in. So lastly, I wanted to talk and comment about this connected generation. I want to really hit on this point really hard because for the longest time I've dealt with brands that are like, well, hang on a second, don't only young people use this stuff, blah, 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 and they don't all sound like that. But the whole point is, we don't need to distinguish between age groups anymore in this particular generation, right? Everyone in this room to me is the same age, right? Because we all have this thing that's always on. And like I mentioned, in countries like Indonesia, let me give you some stats in Indonesia. 50% of Indonesia is under the age of 30. And the first device that all of these youth will buy is a connected device that's constantly connected to the internet. It will be an internet-enabled tablet or a phablet or a smartphone. That's a massive, massive change in the fact that they don't even really need to build physical telephone lines anymore. And there's a lot of different infrastructure that they basically leapfrog. So there's a lot of developing countries or rapidly growing and nascent economies where this opportunity becomes very clear, which is the habits of these users are completely different, right? Things that we had to learn, like the whole concept of texting your airline and texting your concierge is a bit, it's a learning curve. But this is something that instantly became a habit for the way the Chinese youth now interact with their brands on their phones. And that's going to happen more and more, especially in areas of the world like Africa, for example, which will have the largest young population, in the next 15 years, right? These are very, very big things for us to keep an eye on as we see our economies growing. And with this comes hyper-adoption, right? This is a concept that Forrester has been talking about for a little while, and hyper-adoption is really a sign of the times. That the moment something, wasn't it just like a few months ago that the pre-orders for Oculus came out, and boom, and Samsung has their own VR thing now that everyone can buy, and 360-degree camera, and everything is now you just buy it, and it's that fast. And it is in our generation that we want to hyper-adopt, and this connected generation, I mean. How quickly my mom got an Apple Watch, and an iPad, and an iPhone, and now doing more things with those devices than I'm even doing. These are things that we're seeing with this generation, and it is absolutely mind-blowing. The other thing we're seeing is real-world benefit, right? So we actually have been up by a lot of different organizations in healthcare which are two very hard-hitting industries that actually impact people's lives and the way they learn and the way that they're healthy. You can see here actually moments that are in a language learning app, and we're actually rewarding people for learning that vocabulary. And I want to explain that for the first time now we can apply, and I've gone this far in my talk without ever mentioning the G word, which is gamification, which I'm now mentioning, just because I want you to realize that this concept has grown up. Gamification wasn't about that, because it was never about getting people onto a points program and making them do things for you. It was always about bringing in something that was a service to the consumer's life as they live it and adding value when they hit certain triggers. And this is what we've now been able to do and see with our platform, and many, many more to come, and not just with Kiip, but with many other companies. This is really cool stuff. We actually just had a university researcher integrate us into their this app for their diabetes patients that rewards them for taking their medication on time. These are things that, again, are impacting lives. And of course, we did that with helping people get home safely with Uber and Lyft credit, but really, there's a lot more impact to be had here. This is what's really exciting about our industry. Might I remind you, as a marketer, you have access to media that touches billions of people every single day. It's a very powerful industry that we're in. Yet sometimes we waste it on animated GIFs, right? Let's use it for things, and it's not wasting, I love animated GIFs, like the next guy. But the whole point is, how do we use it to add value, and how do we use it to bring utility to the consumer's life? So the way forward is, and I'll leave you with this nugget, is the new connected consumer profile. For many of you who have been in this industry for a few decades, you'll know that thanks to Nielsen and Rentrak, the way that the marketer profiled the consumer was actually via the household, right, via your television set. And we would actually then attach a phone to that, or your computer to that, and then a tablet to that, and that's how we attempted to evolve as things went. But now there's a massive opportunity to use the phone as the centerpiece of the consumer's profile, and attaching TV to that phone, attach to a tablet to that phone, and attach many other connected devices to come. I believe that it was Samsung CEO that said in 2020, every consumer will have, in a given day, 1,000 connected devices surrounding them. This is really, really exciting, right? There's a lot of opportunity, and by the way, it can be many sizes. It doesn't have to be giant things. So there's a lot of this stuff is about how we look at the consumer profile. Why do I mention this? Because marketers will never really necessarily change their view on how to target or how to look at the consumer until we are able to show them where the true leading profiles and behaviors come from, which come from the connected devices that we're engaging with on a daily basis. And this becomes the new consumer profile. This becomes the way we should be defined. When we looked at advertising in the past, people would target ads to the content we were reading or the TV shows we were watching. Because if the brand surmise, let's say a Gatorade was like, well, if you're a fitness fan, you might read Men's Health magazine, right? Because the content of Men's Health could be relevant to you because you're interested in fitness. But I always say, well, why not be there when he's just finished running? So knowing the things that are occurring on that daily basis, knowing that trigger, knowing that moment is incredibly powerful. So the final question I'll leave you with is, what moment will you add value in? We all have this duty as an industry to not take all of these different triggers and turn them into an advertising cesspool. There's a huge risk that this may occur, and I'm actually unleashing this animal with everyone in the room because now everyone knows that there's this opportunity, but we all are in it together. We can either turn it into I literally open my garage door and some coffee gets thrown at me or whatever, and I don't want that to happen, right? We want the moment to eventually create this valuable experience. And it's really about the nature of scarcity, being true to the experience so that the consumer actually is getting value out of it, and really controlling the frequency of how we interact with consumers. This is incredibly important. And so with that, I really hope you understand not only the moments you can own, but how you can truly be there to improve your consumers' lives. Thank you very much.